There we go. So concept 11. Whatever Al-Anon seeks to accomplish, we need good leaders to manage it. We want employees who possess the rare qualities of being able to inspire by example, act firmly but fairly, and stay abreast of the large tasks without losing track of the small ones. We want our staff to take the initiative in planning without controlling others to achieve their objectives. To attract and keep good executives, Al-Anon needs to reward competence with praise, appreciation, and reasonable financial compensation. The same principles apply to all our service positions. We came into Al-Anon burdened by the disease of alcoholism. While we may have blamed others for our unhappiness, we also felt a great deal of responsibility, often for things that were not our fault. Not believing that anyone else would understand or relate to our situation, and often feeling great shame about it, we quietly shouldered responsibilities by ourselves. Our isolation often made us lonely, frustrated, and resentful. In Al-Anon family groups, we discovered that together we can make it. We learned that not only was it unnecessary to do everything by ourselves, it was also usually counterproductive. This is why serving on a committee is so valuable in Al-Anon. While each member has a role and responsibility, by participating in committee assignments, members share the load with each other. In this way, more members experience the value of involvement and more can be accomplished. Forming group conscience and reaching a group consensus as to what constitutes success ensures that our Al-Anon service benefits from a greater number of members and reflects a greater variety of experience. There's a third reading, so give me a moment. No one member determines anything. Even the committees do not exist to make final determinations and decisions, but to follow the will of the conference, the greater group conscience, and provide input and feedback to the staff and the board of trustees. Yet while the committees support the leadership of the trustees, they also share it. Every trusted servant, including each staff member, is a leader. By practicing Al-Anon's spiritual principles and sharing talent, time, and experience with our fellowship, these members lead Al-Anon family groups forward. I'll post those readings in the chat after the end of my little presentation. And just to read out concept 11, the World Service Office is composed of selected committees, executives, and family members. Just get my notes. So the idea behind this, which I find helpful, I think I'm going to talk about my personal application of the principles of concept 11. It's one could sort of do a technical talk on it, but that would take a long time to really do properly. So it's best to just stick to the personal side. The idea is don't try and do something on your own. You've got to delegate or outsource or contract out an awful lot of things, but be very, very careful how you do that. And I think that the key phrase, it's not actually in the literature, but the idea is due diligence, to be very, very careful what you get yourself into. Quite often with my own inventory and do the inventory of people I'm working with, people would describe situations where they hire a contractor to do some work and the work is terrible, and then there's this most awful dispute with them and people suing each other and financial difficulties. And you say, well, what homework did you do on the supplier before you hired them? Well, I didn't. My friend Sally told me they were good or something. A comment which was made to me once, I think this is many, many years ago. It was with a person I was previously in a relationship with. The idea was presented to me that I would get involved in relationships with people without any sort of care or attention. I would launch myself all the way into the center of this person's life. And then 6 weeks later, wake up with absolute horror to realize what I've gotten myself into. Um, there's a 1950s British novel. It's a little bit indecorous what I'm about to say, so plug your ears with cheese if you're of a sensitive nature, where someone goes to a doctor and says, with a particular medical problem downstairs, and the doctor says to him, "You place your private parts where I would hesitate to poke my walking stick." And and so much trouble I get into in life comes from not being careful enough about who I engage with. Um, there was a situation in the world of recovery where two people met in a meeting and they got into a sort of business relationship. One was very successful in business, and the other one was a bit of a climber and wanted to leverage the first person's success. There was some complex sexual altercation, and it was. I mean, I don't know what happened, but I've heard a little bit of both sides, and I think that absolute viper's nest. But it's so interesting. The person the person said, the person who was at the claimed to be at the receiving end of the bad behavior said about having met this person in a meeting, but I had thought that meetings were supposed to be safe places. In other words, this implicit trust that if someone is in a meeting, they are morally upstanding and to be trusted in all matters at all times, even, years later and quite outside the scope of the meeting. Incredible assumption, particularly given, um, it's not like Al-Anon is not like one of those gentlemen's members clubs in the city where you sort of have to know people and go through these complicated membership processes. Um, I mean, our membership requirements are even laxer than they are in AA. We really do let anyone. You got a problem with anything? Well, come in, even if you don't know if there's an alcoholic in your family. If you identify with, you have human feelings, you can come in. And part of my Al-Anonism is gullibility because I so want, I don't know what it is, the relationship or the person to look after me or the financial security. I blind myself to all sorts of real crap on the surface. Um, uh, I love the phrase, the destination is printed clearly on the ticket, but one's got to read the ticket. And concept 11 is about reading the ticket. Whatever destination is printed on there, that's where you're going. A friend of mine talked about uh, getting into an intimate relationship with someone that's never had an intimate relationship lasting more than 6 weeks, thinking, but I will be the one with whom they will settle down. When you start sponsoring someone and they've had 8 sponsors, each for 6 weeks, your sponsorship with them will last for 6 weeks. And all the complaints that they make about the previous sponsors, you're going to be added to the list of complaints. Whatever the history has been will continue to be the case unless something radical is faced and changed. So what Al-Anon has got me to do, and it's been a very, very slow process, is to wise up. And it's with the other side, they talk about the strange mental blank spot, and I have a strange mental blank spot. One of the reasons I still do Al-Anon decades after my first meeting, even though there's no drinking alcoholic in my life, at least not to my knowledge. I mean, they can be so sneaky, one never really knows, but there's no one I know to be drinking. Is that when I'm not sensitized to the Al-Anon stuff, I walk into situations, I get into friendships with people who are in active addiction and simply don't see the signs. It I become really dumb, and lots of Al-Anon wakies me to what is really going on. Another point about uh, concept 11 is the delegation, that not doing everything oneself. And one aspect of delegation, one's got to sort of keep an eye on things in service when things are delegated, particularly on subcommittees. So I've been the chair of a number of subcommittees to put on events, and you've got to keep an eye on what people are doing. But again, it's very interesting when things have gone wrong. If I go back and ask myself, has this person that I've asked to be on this committee got a demonstrated track record of doing their service, doing it well, and not causing difficulties? I would have again seen that there had been problems, that the writing was on the wall. But it's more important to do that than to try and do everything myself, where I get completely exhausted. One point about outsourcing as well, that a person, I think, has more obligations, I certainly do, than I have time to fulfill. And uh, there are lots of things going on in the world, which actually I'm going to backtrack slightly. One of the readings talked about if you're a servant, you're not merely an order taker, you're part of the decision-making body which delegates stuff to you in the first place. So I'll give you an example. So the conference does not sit above the trustees. The trustees are members of the conference. Now, most of the members of the conference are delegates representing the fellowship as a whole, but there are 1 in 10 of the conference members is a trustee. So I still get to be part of that bigger decision-making body, which means when I look at the world, I get to be part of the broader body of humanity, which surveys what is going on, draws a conclusion, and makes decisions as to how to respond to it. But I can't do everything. So with a lot of, well, actually all the political things or broader social things which are concern to me, I know what my position is, and I give money to organizations that carry out good work so that I don't have to spread myself thinly across 87 different tasks. Uh, I have things, I'm very careful to do what I have to do well. I have to be very selective about what I allow into my schedule. Anything I can't do myself must be delegated out. One of the points as well with these people to whom one delegates is when delegating, you've got to be prepared to have them F things up, and then together you sort things out. If you don't give people the scope to F things up, they won't learn how to do them in the first place, which means placing people in a position where they are uncomfortable and out of their depth. So you don't learn to swim, planking on a stool out of the water. You've got to be in the water. It's got to be frightening, and it's got to be real to actually teach you anything. What do they say? Fair weather makes bad sailors. You don't learn how to sail in the storm except by being in the storm. So it means that you see, the comfortable thing is just do everything yourself and don't trust him. But the right thing to do is to trust people, knowing they will fuck it up, and then helping them sort out the fuck up after the event. And then there comes a point where people have to grow into a real leadership position, and you've got to make yourself scarce. One of the reasons, I don't know if you noticed at some meetings, the old timers, as they call them, will sit at the back with their head leaning back against the wall with their eyes shut. Now, this is not because they are old and tired and have dementia. It is because if they keep their eyes open and see everything that's going on, their eyes will swivel and roll in their sockets, and they will have to sit on their hands not to interfere with every passing bullshit that takes place in the meeting. It's the only way of stopping yourself from interfering in a catastrophic way. And one has to absent oneself from groups sometimes to allow people to grow into those roles. Let's see if there's anything else I had on my notes. No, that's all. I'm going to stop there. Would you be able to stop the recording, please, Claudia?